Hey, welcome back to Sports Cards Analysis. I'm JT with another case break simulation. Today we got 2022-23 Credentials Hockey. This is an Upper Deck product, obviously, because it's hockey. And this is actually the second video I'll be posting on this one because one of my viewers, Lucas, had pointed out some things that he was concerned about. Actually forced me to go back and look at some of the code and the data that I'm using for this. And so this is not typically the case. I just want everyone to know that. I found some errors, and usually there's not, those errors aren't in, but there was two situations that occurred. One, in the checklist itself, there was a card that was listed out of three, print run of three, one of three, two of three, three of three, that kind of thing. There were three different ones of those, so there should have been 9 cards total, that actually wound up being given a print run of 500 each. So that was skewing the numbers there. It was one of the update cards from that they're throwing in, these rare update cards that are hard to find from previous sets. Also, what happens is when I have 2 data sets that I use for this. I have a pricing data set that I assign prices to all the cards, which you'll see. If you're a new viewer, stick with me. I swear I'm getting to the data. And then I have the checklist of the cards. And what happens is I have to do a little bit of name stuff because the names have to match perfectly for those 2 data sets to match. And they typically do. And I even have written code to prevent what actually happened in this. It's just something happened where the code got commented out, which means it didn't run, for those who don't code. But I just went and uncommented it and it works. So what happens is when it has certain patterns of letters, stick with me again, it throws spaces in there, like when there's an apostrophe, like D'Angelo would be a name that this commonly happens in. Or in the case where it's uppercase, lowercase, uppercase without a space, for some reason it throws a space in between the Mick and the David. So that happened. And then what wound up happening was the pricing data did not join together with the checklist data. And I wound up having anyone with Mick in their name or any combination of, uppercase, lowercase, uppercase, basically didn't join correctly to the pricing data, and it wound up excluding all those players. So that's why some of this stuff was all out of whack and out of order. Like the Oilers were super low because there was no Connor McDavid cards in there. So that's kind of what happened there. So let's just get in. So I apologize for that. Thank you, Lucas, for that insightful comments, because without that, I wouldn't have gone and checked that stuff and I would have left the video up. This is the first time I've had to take down a video because it was wrong and I don't want to put out bad information. So I apologize for that. Hopefully it never happens again. I hope I didn't lose anybody's trust in these videos. They're still pretty good, still accurate. And I just want you all to know that I'm trying my best. I'm doing the best I can. And it's okay to tell me when you disagree, because typically what happens is someone will disagree with me and I'll just say, hey, here's how I got to that conclusion. And we can mutually disagree, or agree to disagree, or whatever. We can move on, or I can change your mind. But in this case, he actually changed my mind, and I realized that I needed to change the way that I was presenting the data so that it was accurate. So $23.49 is the price of this case at Steel City. The reason why I give that price is because I think that that's a good cushion for breakers. They get the case a little cheaper than that, then they maybe price it up a little to make some profit. Not a lot, but a little. And if you want to see what that might look like, go to Break Comps. Break Comps on Instagram has a ton of information about this stuff. So what I do now is I distribute the cost of this case across all cards equally, so for each category. So for autographs, I'll just say, okay, this team has 3,470 autographs. Let's distribute and all these, we add them all up together. It's every team, not just one per team. And then distribute the cost of the case, $23.49, across them all. So a couple cents per card. Add all that up, and that's what this number represents. It's the amount of money that you should pay for the probability of getting hitting an auto. So that's 1 through 10 there. It's basically just which teams have the most auto. But I wanted to give you some perspective on how much you should pay for those teams based on how many autographs they have. Because a lot of people want to pay for the teams with the most frequent hits, not the best hits. And the best hits, we'll talk about that in the next table. But this is just the most hits. So if you want to pay by most cards, base cards included, inserts, parallels, everything, this is 1 through 10 there. And this is the price. These columns are the price that you should pay. Take screenshots of that. That way, when you make your purchase, you know what you're doing. Now I also rank all of the players and I give them all a value, a dollar value, and I re-rank them every time I run this analysis. So it's not like if a player dips in value, um, I don't re-rank it or it's old data. I try to re-rank them, and sometimes the data is skewed. You know, if a player has in the data that I have, if the player has a lot more low print run, high value cards, so that does affect the data. But what I do is I try to determine based on popularity and things like how frequent the cards are sold, um, whether a player may not sell at all or whether it's a high profit guy, someone who's going to sell right away for a ton of money. You know, your Connor McDavid's. Um, and so then I run 200 case break simulations. I add up all that ROI and I divide it by 200. And the reason why I do that is and this is all with pricing data that I've aggregated from the internet. So I do that so that one, we know what the ROI is, and two, so we can kind of rank these products and these teams against each other. So after evaluating those 1 through 5s, here's what credentials winds up having in its checklist. Lots of 3s and 4s, not so many 5s, although there's more than there were in the last video because I've added in Connor McDavid and anyone else who didn't have who has weird spaces in their name. And there's not as much on the low end, so it's a nice middle tier product. But when it really all shakes out, this product's a 2.6 on the autograph checklist and a 2.7 on the total product checklist. And what that kind of boils down to is, yeah, that's kind of in the middle, but it really is low. It kind of makes this product less than mid tier. It makes it so that you'll probably lose more than you'll gain on this product. But if we want to really get some data behind that, you'll notice this number's low, but this is the total ROI for 200 cases. So I take 200 cases, I run the simulations, I add up all the profit, and then I divide it by 200. Now these teams don't hit in every case, so there's a lot of zeros in there. So that's why this number winds up getting a little low. And there's some low returns where you open a case and the Krakens only had insert and base, and that happens. But over 200 cases, this is your ROI. Now I also rank by these different things, and there was some question about how I'm ranking the autographs. So I'm going to just go into real quick detail about how I do this, and that way I can kind of help. So what I do basically is I take that scale, that 1 through 5 scale, and then I explode the checklist out for all the print runs. So if there's 99 cards, I create 99 rows. And then I give the player on that card that their value score. So if they're a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Okay, stick with me here. And then I add all those up. So one player will have this huge number. If that player's a 5, that number will be very large. If that player's a 2, it won't be as large. And then what I do is I distribute that number across the case price, basically the same way that I do with this. So what happens is I'm distributing all these pennies, all these cents across all these very large numbers. And what that winds up doing is it should typically skew the data towards the more valuable teams, because if a team has a lot of players that are 5s and 4s, the number will be higher. So I obviously sum by team. I forgot to mention that part. Well, what happened in this case with credentials is, and this just kind of lends itself to this set, and I don't want to change this. The most important thing to me is consistency. So I don't want to change the code, and I don't want to change the data or the stats. So here's what happened with the Columbus Blue Jackets. The Columbus Blue Jackets, and some of these other teams as well, there's so few 4s and 5s in this set. There's so few, well, there's a good amount of 4s, but there's so few 5s. And there's so many 3s and 2s that what happened with the Blue Jackets was they had like 400 or 500 autographs that were in the 4 category, and they had thousands, 2,000 in the 2 category. And that happened across a couple teams. And so it's not supposed to happen this way, but it did in this case, where the 2s totally just overtook the 4s and all the other teams and wound up being the highest strength, the best strength number 1. So in this particular case, let's use the ROI as our indicator for which teams have the best return. Because this product is so skewed towards lower value players, It's just so that the highest frequency of hits in this product, unfortunately, are bad, low return players. And that's just the truth of it. So I'm not saying that the number one ranked team here has the best players, the highest, strongest checklist. That's typically what I'm saying. So yes, it's confusing, but that's not what I'm saying now. What I'm saying now is these teams in this order provide the best ROI, over 200 cases. And that number's crazy low. But we're going to go over another table next. So that's page 3, take screenshots. Page 3, this is what the ROI is when it actually hits. But I'm also giving you how many cases it hit in 200. So the Kraken autographs, that's the card type, it hit in 64 cases, which is just over 1/4 of the time. And that was the US ROI, and that's the Canadian ROI for when it hit. So really good cards, really good cards. In 64 cases, we got some really high value Kraken cards. In 71 cases, we got some really high value Oilers cards. Obviously, that's typically the case. So here's the top 20 teams for that, and the card type, the team, the ROI, and the number of cases that they hit. So if you really wanted to read this like fractional, half the time, for every 2 cases that are opened, one of them will contain a wild autograph, and it will return about a $200 Canadian ROI. Is that what you're paying for that spot? I have no idea, but you should probably base a lot of what you pay on some of this ROI stuff, because I do try to take my pricing stuff pretty seriously. You can see the dip here in the base. The base just drops off, and that comes in 200 cases. So interesting that only on the second page there I'm starting to get base. There must be a lot of low value cards. So there you go. That's really how it is. So now we're getting into kind of parallels and base, and they hit in 200 cases. So we could really focus on this first page, and this is really where the money's at, these autographs here. That's the top 20 teams there. So now let's talk about set types. Set types, I try to do this just to show you how rare certain set types are. So this is for the 200 case break simulation. I'm showing you how many times, again, this set type, the subset, hit in 200 cases and what type of ROI. So this is like what I would probably list that card for, not knowing anything. But when you find out that in 200 cases it only hit one time, it's a pretty rare card. It's hard to find. You're going to have to hit hundreds and hundreds of cases in order to get this multiple times. So now maybe the 605 price is actually kind of low. That's how you should think about this table. You know, if you get a card like here, this one here, first star of the night rookie autographs, it hit in 12 cases. So that's not that high out of 200. It's 1/20th of the time. So is it really this valuable? Is it lower, higher? You know, judge it off of its rarity, because sometimes a print run doesn't tell you what you think it's telling you. Yeah, 1 of 1's fine, but is a 1 of 1 really that rare? Some products, no. In this product, yeah, it kind of is, but in some products it's not. So here we go. So these are just some subsets, top 20 subsets, and how rare they are. They're pretty rare. Some of these are really rare. So let's talk about the master checklist. Cards by player. We just want to see like who has the most cards. These are the top 10 players that have the most cards and credentials. Who has the most autographs? These people. I went back and verified because I know that this guy's name came up in Lucas's comment. So I went and verified how many autographs does this guy have. And now I do want to mention that the highly anticipated autographs, they're not numbered in the checklist, but I did a bunch of calculations and tried to figure out how many cases they're going to produce of this, and a rough estimate. And then I know that those highly anticipated come 1 in every 70 packs. So what I did was I figured out how many cases there's going to be, divided that number by 70. Oh no, I multiplied that by the number of packs there would be. So there we go. First, then I divided it by 70, then I divided it by 35, and I got in the neighborhood about 200. So highly anticipated will be one of the higher print runs for autographs, but I don't think it's like an outrageous number, like over 1,000 per player. Maybe with parallels and stuff, I don't know if there's even parallels. But this number is accurate as I can tell. So here's who has the most autographs, and I'll go through a few pages there. And remember, some of the numbers I had to just like calculate. And so they could be wrong, but if they are wrong, they're equally wrong for all the players. So the ranking is still right. So there's page 1 again. And we can go through who has the most cards. We can go through a couple pages there. There's page 2, page 3. So if you're chasing a player in particular, use this. You know, Patrick Kane. I'd totally go buy a bunch of Patrick Kane cards. Big Blackhawks fan. There you go. Now, total number for each team. We kind of already went over this in the distribution of probability. So I'm only going to show you the top 10 there. Number of cards per team for the master checklist. Now, 1-of-1s. Remember I said they're kind of rare? They actually are. 408 is a large number for 1-of-1s. There's 408 1-of-1s. But in some products, there's thousands of them. So this is actually not that bad. So 408. 1-of-1s are a little more rare than they usually are. And if you want a 1-of-1, here's the top 10 teams that have 1-of-1s. 26 Blue Jacket 1-of-1s. Keep that in mind. If you're chasing those rare 1-of-1 cards, go for the Blue Jackets. Now I'm going to show you the case break simulation. I'm showing you this. I reran the simulation with this second go. I think because I do something called seeding on the randomness, some of this stuff's going to look the same. And it probably is. It's just that there's far less of a print run for some of these cards now, so it should be a little different. So here's the lowest print run. I got a 10. I got a 1-of-10 Kuzmenko. And we're just going to go through this. The only reason I show you this is, 1, to show you that I do run the simulation. And hey, sometimes I make mistakes. And 2, so you could set your expectations as far as what the quality of these breaks are. You know, you're not just getting 30 Connor McDavid cards, Connor Bedard or whoever. He's obviously not in this. Austin Matthews, stuff like that. You're going to get a little bit of varied quality in these cards. So there's that. That's my simulation. Now we're going to look at the 200 case simulation for 1-of-1s. I think I got about 18. I don't want to count them like I did the first time I made the video. I counted them on the video. But if that's the case, usually there's a bunch of numbers down here that indicate that there's multiple pages of 1-of-1s, but there's only 1 page of them, and it looks like, you know, less than 20. So keep in mind that 1/10 of the time, basically, there's going to be a 1-of-1. Now, ROI by team. So I told you which team is the best, but maybe we should look across all the breaks and see how the teams vary. Do the Oilers ever perform poorly? Do the Blackhawks ever perform really well? Let's look at 20 breaks. Just find the teams that you're interested in and just kind of look, screenshot, figure out what the frequency is that they hit hard and the frequency that they miss a lot, you know. So we got some teams here like LA got a good break here, but not so good there. So that's what I'm trying to show you here, is that there's variance, and you should always keep that in mind. Sometimes the Kraken are just like the best. So there's a little bit of variance there. So there you go. Now, for all 200 cases, here's by team. Is it representative of what the master checklist is? A little bit. So there you go. That's by team for 200 cases. 200 cases for 1-of-1s. I actually got 4 of the Coyotes, so maybe that's something you should look into. Winnipeg Jets had 2. The rest all had 1 and then 0. So maybe look at these 2. If you're chasing those 1-of-1s, look at these 2 teams. And I do get guys who are like, I chase 1-of-1s. So that's interesting. That's you're living on the edge if that's how you collect. But all right, so for autographs, and this is for the 200 cases, this is just a breakdown by card type. I got 275 Blue Jackets, 205 Coyotes, and then you can kind of read the rest. I'll bring this up a little so you can see the rest of them. There they are. Now for inserts, if you're interested in those inserts, there's the top 20 teams for inserts, and parallels, there's the top 20 for parallels. Oh, no, that's the bottom 20. There's the top 20. Boom. That's it. That's 2022-23 Credentials Hockey. Sorry I had to take a second chance, and if you guys watched the first video, I apologize for having to take it down. I do appreciate the viewership. Thank you so much. Like, subscribe. Please comment if you find any errors. I want to know about them. Thanks.